All right, guys, welcome back to the Golf Podcast. This is episode number 306. And actually today, as of when this drops, Mike, we are leaving for Orlando for the Pga Show. Always an exciting event every year. Love to get down there. How about yourself?
Yeah, it's like our Super Bowl, number one.
It truly is.
And we get to meet and see all of our buddies out there in the industry that we only really see that week, once a year.
Yeah.
You know, so it's cool to catch up. Plus, it's like 75, 80 degrees.
Can't wait to get down there and actually swing a golf club outdoors.
I know.
For once.
When's the last time you swung a club?
I mean, I've been trying to do some indoor work, but it's not the same.
Not the same.
Outdoors, it's been. I think what was our last round? Was probably November, right?
Geez.
Early November.
Early November.
I think it was early November. So we're pushing like almost 60 days here since we've been out on a golf course. But hey, that is life living in the Northeast. Anybody who lives up this way knows that. We've got a great interview we're going to bring on the show very shortly. We're going to be talking with Scott Fawcett and Lou Stagner. And this one, by the way, comes from a suggestion from one of our listeners.
Love it.
Anthony Oshawa. A couple of weeks ago, maybe it was 2-3 weeks ago, we had posted, especially for the new year 2020, we said, who do you guys want to see on the show this year? And a bunch of you had responded with a couple of great possible interviews, and this was one of them. So thank you, Anthony, for bringing that to our attention. We recently linked up with Scott and Lou. We're going to be talking about their decade system, which really leads into too something that's been a big goal of mine. We talked about this on our goals episode. I want to focus on course management and smarter golf. So the whole structure of the decade system is exactly that. They're going to be talking about smarter golf, calculations that you can make out there to really calculate the risk reward of each shot. It's something that they really dive into. The math on it is incredible. And some guys like Bryson DeChambeau has raved about it.
Sure.
He's used this system before. So I like those types of things where we can see a way that you can score better without having to change your swing, because I think that's the intimidating thing for a lot of us, is having to go through those swing changes. If you can find a way to start to score better without having to do that, that's great. So this has been something that, like I said, it's been on my mind, been wanting to do that. So I'm happy to get them on in a few minutes. Just other quick notes from around Golficity. Twig, we had a lot of fun with that.
Love Twig. It's my new favorite thing to do.
It really is a lot of fun. It is. And we've always wanted a space where we can just kind of informally talk about the different stuff that's going on. There's been so much great golf news on Golficity. So it gives us a spot to talk about it. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, you guys got to check it out.
I appreciate the feedback too. A lot of great comments. Thank you guys for giving us a shot here, because, Twig is our life anyway without the camera. I mean, we just talk about golf like sitting on a couch after we're done recording the podcast here. So we're like, let's just turn it on and make it something.
That's just it. So, and then we're going to grow that show and change it as we go. We've got some ideas for some guests, some segments that we want to do. It's all about combining golf but having a little bit of fun. So if you guys haven't seen Twig yet, you can get it in the Golficity app. You can see it on YouTube, Facebook Watch. It's just about everywhere. And keep giving us that feedback, because we definitely want to hear from you guys. The other thing too, speaking of more content, Ronnie.
Can't wait.
Ronnie from New Jersey. He's got his new podcast, right?
Yeah. So Inside the Leather. What is it? Sunday, this episode comes out. His first episode is probably going to be out. It's out by now. Probably not on iTunes yet. It might be in there, it might not. But of course, you can get it in the Golficity app. You can watch him on his YouTube channel, Inside the Leather. The guy's hysterical.
He is. We had a lot of fun helping him put his first episode together, because he said, well, what should I do with my first episode? And we're like, tell your story. Man.
Who are you? Because it's great.
Yeah. And it's just and it's, again, another reason why I love the game of golf is we've all have a story and a reason that has kind of brought us to the game. And amazingly, we talked about this with Greg Angelillo too, when golf is like kind of this common thread that ties a lot of other areas of your life together.
Yes.
And that was the same thing with Ronnie. Such an interesting story between his college days to, bartending, working in the, whatever it was.
He was working in a funeral home,
right? To later working in Hollywood for so long, filming commercials and things like that. And I thought his stories were even interesting there. The value of golf, even in getting roles in different things, and his career there.
It's incredible. I mean, here's a guy who won 6 figures on Deal or No Deal. You'll hear that story on episode 1. And then he goes out to Hollywood just on a chance. He goes out there, and the story is great. You got to tune in to hear it. But I love the story. I love where he came from. And I think he's going to bring a lot of fire, because he's got such a passion for golf.
He really does. It shows through. And we said that when we said we want to bring more content to Golficity, we want to bring more personalities. We said we're looking for people who you don't necessarily have to be the best golfers. We just want to find people who have the passion for it, passion for the game. And you can really sense it with him. So I'm excited for his podcast too, guys. Check that out. Like Mike said, in the Golficity app. It's going to be on iTunes and all the podcast platforms soon. It takes a couple days for it to hit all the platforms, but you can always get it in the Golficity app for sure.
Dude, I had a quick coffee revelation I want to share with you.
Okay. All right.
This is like a game changer in my life right now. Getting the iced coffee with the new lid. Let me just tell you something. The coffee actually tastes better. It'll blow your mind when you do it. Guys,
is it just because it's a quicker application?
No, it's kind of like, like the wide mouth cans of a beer can or something?
It's a quicker application.
It's a quick application.
Yeah.
Yes, number one. But I'm just telling you, it's just the days of me drinking out of a straw are now completely over. I've been ruined. This is the greatest thing in the world.
Gotcha. So you're that guy now at Starbucks who asked for the other lid.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I like it.
I always ask for it.
Mike's
Can I get
hack.
it in the new lid? The guy's like, all right.
Mike's life hacks. I love it.
Come on.
All right. What do you say? Let's do a quick word from our sponsors. And I want to dive into this Twitter tap-in because we're going to start talking Masters already.
Oh, man. Can't wait. All right. Let's do it. So, guys, we're excited to share with you exclusive opportunities from Titleist. But to be a part of them, you have to join Team Titleist. That's right. Team Titleist gives you access to opportunities like golf ball prototype testing, special events, limited edition gear from Titleist. You guys see us rocking those hats with the TT and things like that. So much more. Sign up. It's free. Join Team Titleist at www.titleist.com/Team Titleist. It's one word, Team Titleist. And Frank, we're going to be doing, I think, fairway metals and hybrid fittings at a Team Titleist event pretty soon, hopefully. Mm-hmm. So we get to experience that full Titleist Thursday experience coming up. But in order to, get all those cool benefits that you and I got with the prototype balls, things like that, you got to be a part of it.
Yeah, and I love it. They often surprise people sending different types of swag and things like that. So it's a great thing to be involved in. All right. Our Twitter tap-in segment. So again, this
was a good one.
This was a lot of fun. And if anybody who's new to this, we started rolling this out just a couple weeks ago. Every week on our Twitter, we're going to put out some sort of question to you guys. Again, another goal for us for the show in general for 2020 was to find more ways to get you guys involved and to hear more from you. So this is one way we're doing it. We're going to throw a question out there. Make sure you look for it. Follow Golficity on Twitter. And then we started with a fun one. Everybody loves to talk Masters. So we said, who is your super early pick to win the Masters this year?
And before we answer it, when you look at these answers, it just shows you how great the state of this game is.
Because there's so many people who could win.
It's so diverse.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So let's jump.
I think early prediction. I think you're going to see one of the most watched. We always talk about breaking records and things like that as far as broadcast records. I think you're going to see one of the most watched Masters ever. You're talking about the 2020 Masters with Tiger coming back as the reigning champ. I mean, come on.
It's going to be epic, dude.
Tiger is going to put the green jacket on someone. He may be putting it on himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's look at a couple of these. So we got, let's see. Tyler Florio says lefty. He's been killing it lately. Yeah. I mean, you get back and forth. You get people talking about Mickelson saying, he's having a little bit more trouble contending, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But the reality is we've also seen him slim down, working on fitness. I mean, slim down tremendously. And he's also, as he calls them, hitting bombs. He is, the length is there. So,
he knows the track. He knows it well. He's won it.
Listen, especially when it comes to the Masters, I always put weight, obviously, into the people who've won it there, the people who know that, because it's such a consistent thing. The fact that they're playing Augusta every year.
Tournament, yeah.
Exactly. Whereas when you have things like the British Open, the US Open, changing venues, it kind of levels the field a little ways there. But I think the Masters is always going to give a little bit of an advantage to those who have been there. They know it. They know how to play it. Tiger being one of them, Phil being another one. I think that's a big part of it.
Huge. I totally agree. And looking at some of these responses, I'll just ramble a couple off here. There's Ronnie. Speaking of Ronnie, he writes Brooks according to Vegas, but T Woods according to Inside the Leather Show. So there's your Tiger out of the way. A lot of people, like you said, are going to be rooting for him. But I'm seeing a lot of Ricky. The Pin High Podcast boys tweeted Ricky. I think Ricky,
it's just a big thing. If everyone willing it, they just want it to happen.
There's who do you want to win and who do you think's going to win?
It's you take a guy like Ricky who's been so great for the game and he's so good with all the other players love and respect him. I think it's just everyone wants to see him get that major. And I think that's a big part of it. Game wise, we'll see how he plays this week. But I don't think there's anything that's been coming out of him lately. However, Ricky's also the type of guy who on any given week can either just completely wow you or just disappoint you. It's very tough to pin his game down sometimes. It's really whether it comes together for him, but I think it's very well good. Other names, Alexander Wiley says Xander Schauffele, which is true. I mean, again, the guy's been playing lights out. We saw him play at the what was it? The Century Tournament of Champions coming down to the wire. He played really well at the President's Cup. It's really, he's got the game that could make it happen.
Multiple people went with Xander. I went with Justin Thomas, and I saw a couple of people throwing out a couple JTs. One guy responded to me and said, "Wrong, Justin, my friend," and put a rose emoji there, which, wouldn't surprise me. Rory wouldn't surprise me.
Rose came right down to the wire with Sergio that year.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. So he's got the chops to be there. Fleetwood, Jake Hansen says, "I'm rooting for Tommy Fleetwood." Fleetwood's got the game to do it again. Just like it's resonating more like what you said. There's so many names.
There's so many, and I forget the hole it is. It might be 16. I don't know. Shout it in the comments if I'm wrong. There's that par 3 that they all hit that green and it funnels all the way down to the hole. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. It's like 16 or 17, and there's so much drama there on Sundays because all these guys, they put it and then they put that pin placement down where the ball just funnels. I mean, guys are making hole-in-ones on that hole. I mean, I cannot wait for Masters Week.
It's just so much fun. And of course, we can't say this without talking about Rory. A couple people here. Charlie, he says, Rory all the way for the career Grand Slam. We know Rory's hungry for it. We know he's got the game for it. Again, it's just whether or not he shows up. Again, it's also the difficulty of field. We talk about Brooks Koepka.
I was going to say it wouldn't surprise me if Brooks pulled a Bethpage Black and ran away with it.
But Brooks, in a lot of ways, not only he's number one golfer in the world, he's got the game, but he overpowered a very long course in that case. Here with Augusta, it's not necessarily the length that gets you.
Yeah, true. You got to be a little sharper.
I still think it comes down to experience. So a lot of people say, Tiger Woods. Where is it here? I saw Blair Wheeler said Tiger freaking Woods, which is true. I mean, look, you can't take away from him. But Koepka was there on Tiger's heels last year. Koepka is such a competitor. I can see him. He definitely, to me, is one of those guys who has the mental chops 100% to get it done. We've seen him as a major specialist, right? So I think he's got, like I said, with the mental chops to do it. Justin Thomas obviously has the game. I see that coming through a lot.
I'm seeing a lot of phenows. I'm seeing Patrick Cantlay, which guy's a great golfer. Tommy Fleetwood's due for something big. None of these guys would surprise me. Amazing. Smiley Kaufman. Someone had to throw the smiley comment out there. Yeah.
Just dogging them. But look, I tell you what, so many responses to this that just kind of tells me it rings a tone with everybody, that when you start to talk about the Masters, and it's just going to be an exciting year. Thank you for everybody who responded. And like I said, I mean, we'd have to tally them up to see it, but I'd say it's almost a 3-way tie between Koepka, Rory, and Tiger for mentions here. And then with other ones, hot on the heels would be Xander. Just scrolling through it here. Justin Thomas would be the other ones. So this is quite
are those three the top 3 in Vegas?
I don't know. Do they even have the Vegas lines out this far in advance?
Yeah, I'm looking them up right now. I have here Brooks 9-1, Rory 10-1, Tiger 12-1.
There you go. Top 3.
And then you got Rahm right there, right behind Tiger at 14-1, which he was on that list. Someone mentioned him, and he's hot right now.
Nick said John Rahm. Let's see what he said here. Turned into my favorite player on tour since his first win because of his demeanor and work ethic.
Yeah. Look at some of these odds down here. Larry Mize 5,000-1. Sandy Lyle. Is Sandy Lyle still alive?
Quick throw $5 on Wise for me.
Do you want to put $5 on Wise?
We'll take this long shot.
And then we could take like a massive trip somewhere to Pebble Beach or something. All right.
Exactly.
I love seeing some of these ones. Freddie Couples 500-1. Can't wait.
Freddie. Boom, boom. All right. I don't want to keep these guys waiting too long. Like I said, we got Scott and Lou that we're going to bring on the show in a second. Before we do, let's do a quick word from our sponsors, and then I want to bring him right on. First of all, we want to thank ShotScope. ShotScope V2 is the world's smartest golf watch. And really, it's just, to me, I feel like it's the smartest watch out there. Mm-hmm. I wish this watch did that watch does. So the V2, it's easy to use. You get loads of stats. It offers that laser-like GPS. Actually, I was just rewatching one of our vlogs from Orlando last year. I was watching it last night. It was Hawks
Landing.
Landing. And we saw, the marker on the ground, the official yardage marker said 192, and I lift my wrist and I see 192 on my shot scope. So it just tells me that, again, those are the types of things that have really given me the confidence in it to know that I can use it and know that my numbers are going to be right. They give you front, back, middle. They give you hazards. Everything there is on your watch. It's just a glance down. But the nice thing too is not only are you getting that when you're on the course, when you're off the course, you get to go back and dive through your different stats. And one thing that I saw ShotScope just talking about this week was that they've got a feature in there, and the dashboard is so robust. There's so much stats there. You got to dig deep sometimes to figure out where I can find more stuff. But I saw that they've even got the ability to compare one club against another. So I want to see, we've got to get a couple more rounds in with the T200 and, the T-Series irons. I'd love to go and compare them to the performance of the AP3s from last year to see if we really get with the dispersion on the course that we saw in the dispersion with the fitting.
Now he's thinking.
Right? So I'm going to dive in and take a look at that. So you can learn a lot more about your golf game. Get yourself a ShotScope V2 by visiting shotscope.com/Golficity, or you can use code V2Golficity for $30 off. Make sure you guys use that because it is going to be the best discount you can get out there. We also want to thank FootJoy. We've been wearing the new spikeless shoe from FootJoy a lot this year, the FJ Flex. Actually, we're both wearing them right now. I'm wearing the waterproof
the most comfortable
version.
Things in the world.
Yeah, I wear them as sneakers, so they're really terrific. It's been one of the best-selling shoes this year. Like I said, we worn them everywhere. We're going to be wearing them around the PGA Show. They're great for that, too, because we're going to be bouncing in and out of like the simulators and stuff while we're there, taking cuts. So it's nice to know we can walk around, but then also take some swing and you get that, traction that you need. So they just released that new version, like I said, I'm wearing right now the Flex XP, which is that new lightweight performance upper mesh. It's waterproof. It's comfortable. It's built with that FJ Flex outsole. So you get that excellent grip. So it feels just like my FJ Flex, but it's got that waterproof component to it.
Yep.
So I just alternate between the weather that day of what I'm wearing. You can wear these, to and from work like we're doing right now, hit a bucket of balls on the range, play 18. They're so versatile. You can really wear them everywhere. You can even wear them to dinner afterwards.
Do you know where I wore them the other day?
Where's that?
Bowling. I didn't put on the bowling shoes. I kept the flexes on, and everyone was like looking at me. But I'm like, dude, these are the best.
Maybe tell FootJoy they've got a whole new market that they can work with of bowlers. So a lot of people have tried to do this type of versatile shoe. FootJoy's really nailed it. They've elevated the whole category. So you can start flexing with the all new Flex XP, rain or shine. Don't miss out on the shoe everyone's gonna be talking about this year. Like I said, they're gonna be super hot at the PGA Show this year. Learn more about the FJ Flex at footjoy.com. Make sure you guys check them out. And like I said, you'll see us wearing them that week. All right, let's bring Scott and Lou on the show. I want to talk about this decade system.
Let's do it.
All right, so we are incredibly excited to have Scott Fawcett and Lou Stagner on the phone here. We're going to be talking about the decade system. I'm going to let you guys explain that in a second because I'm sure you can explain it a lot better than I can. But first, let's just get a little bit of background. Scott, let's start with you. First, welcome to the show, and if you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us on. Appreciate it. Should be a fun conversation. I graduated from Texas A&M. I got a couple math-related degrees, and then I played professional golf for about 6 years, and then went back just to start an electricity company and ran that for about 6 years. And then I went back and entered Q school again as a 35-year-old amateur and made it through all 4 stages. And that was when I first started really understanding like how to apply just data and really poker strategy and psychology as much as anything to the game of golf. And went back and got my amateur status back again in 2013, which is when I took all of these strokes gain statistics in combination with TrackMan data and essentially, air quotes, solved course management. And then to apply it for the first time that summer, I caddied for Will Zalatoris, who, shout out, is in second place heading into today's final round of the Korn Ferry Tour after going hole-in-one birdie eagle on the back nine yesterday. But
wow,
it was insane.
Come on.
He actually texted me right after the round. All it just said was blackout. I'm like, you think? I mean, he normally hits his pitching wedge 155, and he hit it a hole-in-one, had a hole-in-one with it from 98 yards. That's how windy it was yesterday. But anyways, caddied for him when he won the Texas A&M US Junior. And the SMU coach, I really wasn't trying to create a product where I'd be on a Golf City podcast 6 years later. But the SMU coach was like, look, I don't know what you're telling him, but if you can teach it indoors, you've got kind of a pretty cool little thing here to potentially help some younger players. So, Bryson DeChambeau is one of the next players I work with, and next thing you know, I've got kind of an influx of colleges and professionals and whatever. And so at this point, I've been banned by the NCAA. They consider me a third paid coach. So I can't give my seminar in person anymore. But we created the Decade app to effectively replace my seminar with the content and then a stats portal. And now here I am, a guy who owns an electricity company, teaches golf on the side, and entered Q School as a 46-year-old amateur this reason for some apparent reason to try to see how fun it is just to try to apply all this nonsense I teach on a daily basis.
Yeah, so lots of stuff that you've put together over the years.
And Scott, am I correct? You actually played in a U.S. Open?
I did, the one in 1999 at Pinehurst that Payne Stewart won.
Aha, awesome.
Yeah, that
cool.
was a big one, that's for sure.
Yep.
But
it's funny because when I qualified for that one, I'm not gonna say I was disappointed, but I didn't know anything about Pinehurst number 2. It wasn't Pebble Beach in my view.
Right.
But if you were to say what's one of the most iconic U.S. Opens in the last 30 years, it's certainly up there in the top, memorable. Obviously, unfortunately, because Payne passed away, but just the event itself with the putt on 18 and Phil having a baby and just everything. It was a pretty cool one to have been a part of.
Yeah, for sure.
Undoubtedly a memorable one, that's for sure. And you mentioned the Decade app there. I want to dive into that in a moment because it is quite robust. I've been picking through some of your walkthrough videos. Amazing what you're able to do there by putting every single shot in and analyzing that. So we'll get into that in a second. But I also want to give Lou a second to introduce himself. And Lou, if you could tell us a little bit about your journey with the game.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having us on today. Looking forward to the conversation. My background, by comparison to Scott's, is significantly more boring. I have not played in any U.S. Open, so we'll just get that out of the way up front. I am absolutely the math nerd on the call here. I have a day job in corporate America. I run an analytics team and have a number of data scientists and statisticians and analysts, and we do all sorts of nerdy math things. And about a year ago, I started blogging just about golf analytics. It's something that I've been into. It's kind of a natural fit with what my day job is. And not too long after I started blogging, Scott and I connected. We developed a bit of a relationship. And a few months ago, we formed a partnership that I'm pretty excited about. We have a lot of cool things in the hopper that are planned for the near future and later on in this year. So thanks again for having us on the call, and looking forward to it.
It's definitely great to have you. And you speaking of, as you said, like math nerd, so to speak, but I'd say if anything, you're hitting your stride with that right now. And we see guys like Bryson DeChambeau, as you mentioned earlier, coming to the forefront, and we're seeing more of that analytical approach, I guess we want to say, hit the mainstream of golf. So it seems like it's perfect timing for you.
Yeah,
it is for sure. Go ahead, Lou. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the game has definitely changed. I think compared to many of the other sports, golf is years behind with respect to taking advanced analytics and understanding the game better and learning how to apply it. Scott really was a pioneer in taking strokes gained and figuring out how to apply that to playing smarter and better golf. But we're at the infancy of golf analytics and what can be done, and I think the game will be significantly different in another 5 to 15 years based on all the things we'll continue to learn. Just compare golf to what baseball has gone through over the last couple of decades, and that's definitely what's on the horizon for golf. So it should be a fun ride.
That is definitely the comparison that I hear very often when it comes to baseball being such a data-driven sport, and then golf right there on its heels. And I agree. And as we see too now, not only what we see with the PGA Tour, obviously the level of statistics, but even as more and more of your regular amateur golfers are starting to log those data points in the form of a lot of wearables that we're starting to see come out from a number of different companies. It's just all it is it's giving us a bigger and bigger data set that we can start mining. So I agree. I think we're going to learn more and more as the years kind of progress.
Well, that's what I started to say a second ago was I've got, math related degrees, but they're from 1996. I mean, computers existed, but not in the form they currently are. So while I understand all of the math, I don't really know how to answer the question. So I feel like I know the best questions in the world to ask of the data, but quite often I just either don't have the time or don't really understand how to answer the question. And that's why a partnership with a guy like Lou works so perfectly for me, because with working with tour players and everything, I can be like, this is what I need to know. And Lou is just absolutely fantastic at doing it. But then also I've been really impressed with all the other questions that he's asking on his own that he obviously posts out on Twitter quite a bit. And just to speak to the idea of, golf entering, catching up, if you will, with other sports. Mm-hmm. I don't watch a whole lot of other sports. I really don't even watch much golf either. I just don't have time or interest. But when I was watching a little bit of the football game the other night with Clemson and LSU, I couldn't believe, I think it was when Clemson was going for 2, and the announcer, whoever was like, this is interesting here. They're going for 2, but a lot of the analytics now are starting to show that this is the play. I'm like, it's the only option right here because of whatever the score was to get it within 3 or however the setup was. It was as simple as 2 + 2 that it's the only option. And I'm not quite as dogmatic as Joe Mayo, the TrackMan maestro, with pulling my hair out every time somebody doesn't go for it on 4th and 1 or kicks a field goal from the 3-yard line because it freaks him out. But there's certain things where it's just like it's the only option. Yes, I understand there's a chance we might not get it and we've wasted a point, but the percentage of chances on a 2-point conversion you're going to make it, making up a number of 60%. Well, you're gaining 0.2 points every time you try it, even if you miss it. And that's in trying to educate the listener. The game theory part of golf, of analytics, of sports analytics is the easiest way to explain it is if we're flipping coins, and every time that we flip a coin, you give me $20 if I win, or I give you $20 or $10 rather if you win. If we flip a coin and you win and I give you 20, did you win money? And I would argue, no, you didn't. Yes, I just gave you $20, but we don't have to do that bet very many times, and I'm going to be net positive. And so really understanding that in golf, it's the exact same thing. There are just certain things. Like on Twitter today, Michael Clayton had posted a picture from the Australian Amateur where there's just bunkers and stuff everywhere. And they were saying he was caddying for Lucas, who won the U.S. Mid-Am this year. And they were wondering, I wonder what Fawcett would think of this. And it's just it's just driver. It's 300 to the front edge, and there's stuff everywhere. No club removes all the junk, but every club but driver removes the green. And so,
right.
Send it.
You're taking a very complex situation and simplifying it based on that looking at those raw numbers. By the way, too, you're giving me flashbacks to my game theory classes from God, what was it, 10 years ago now, and it's dusting off.
You're probably smarter than I am.
Listen, you're dusting off
25 years ago.
You're dusting off corners of my brain that haven't been used in quite some time. But I tell you what, look, we've kind of given it the lip service, and even ourselves talking about it, because not being experts in it, but talking about saying, smart course management, kind of throwing those buzzwords around there, saying risk versus reward, playing those shots that are going to be a little bit less risky, get you in a little bit less trouble. But could you tell us, it sounds like you're digging in a lot deeper as far as supporting it with the different analytics. Tell us what Decade is, what the philosophy is, if you could kind of sum it up. Obviously using what we've kind of built as a foundation here, both with Scott and with Lou, of your different experiences in different areas, and how did you guys put that together, and what is Decade?
I think the main thing that Decade is really established, and that I don't think really people understood with golf. We've all seen the movie, well, older people have seen the movie Hoosiers, where when they walk out into the big gym in Indianapolis, the first thing the coaches do is they measure how far the free throw line is. 15 feet, coach. Then they measure the rim. 10 feet. They're just establishing this is exactly like our gym back home in Hickory. And golf, even if you give a great playing lesson, if you give an amazing playing lesson and your home course is St. Andrews, where 18 green is 52 yards wide, and then actually let's reverse this. If you give a great playing lesson in your home course is Pebble Beach, where every green is tiny. Tommy Fleetwood didn't even take a yardage book or a pin sheet to the U.S. Open this year. And then all of a sudden you show up at St. Andrews where the greens are 50 yards wide. It's just a totally different game. And so really golf is the largest outdoor sport played with the ball in the air the longest. And most importantly, it's the only sport in the world that's not played on a uniform court. A field of competition, and it's the only sport in the world that's not practiced on the field of competition. Everything about golf is so set up for failure. It's really unbelievable. And then you also have such emotion because you're out there as an individual. You don't have a team hiding a lot of your mistakes. the whole game is just set up for failure. So, the traditional course management, like to what Decade is, the traditional course management advice is, hey, let's shade this more towards the middle of the green here or whatever. Unless you know how wide the green is, how long the shot is, and what the adjacent hazard is, what the surrounding hazards are, that may or may not be good advice. And so really Decade starts working off of the edge of the green as opposed to thinking about the middle of the green. I want you to be as aggressive as physically possible within reason, based on the length of the shot, the surrounding hazard, the course conditions, the wind that day. There's a few different things that go into that calculation, but at the end of the day, it's just, I've been saying this, I said it recently on Cordy's podcast, so I'll repeat myself as often as possible. But every decision you make in life, every single decision you make in life is a math-based decision. It's something as stupid as crossing the street is actually, at the end of the day, a math-based decision. So there's a car coming. Will I beat it 50% of the time? Sure. Well, you're probably not going to cross the street then. We're going to get that pretty damn close to 100% before you're actually going to go. So even though that no one would think of that as a math-based decision, it is. And really, when people say anything negative about course management, about Decade, they're thinking, why are we introducing all this math? Well, hopefully you're picking a target somehow currently.
Right.
We're just giving you a structured, emotionless way of doing it that is rooted in math. And so it is a math-based system where, again, to answer the question fully, you take the length of the shot, you take the surrounding hazard, the wind, and there's these just little modifiers that is as simple as 7 + 1 - 2. And that number is how far you should be aiming potentially from the edge of the green. And if you know the pin is 4 yards from the edge of the green, then you should be aiming slightly away from that flag.
And how much adjustment comes into that based on the individual golfer themselves? Because I did see, especially with the app, there's a component where individual golfers can enter their shot by shot, and it'll kind of give that analysis of what you played and how you could have played it. Is it something it's fairly consistent for golfers that this is the smartest shot no matter who you are, or is there a component that comes in for your individual ability level, let's say?
Once you can break 80, strategy is pretty generic, and it's really hard for people to wrap their head around. Strategy is pretty generic between you and a tour player. The tour player beats you because they're better than you. And once you've optimized your strategy, that's kind of as far as you can take it. Now you do need to physically get better. And the way to explain that is, imagine a green that's about 20 yards wide, which is about an average green, and there's a lake on the right, and there's a bunker on the left. Traditionally, you would tell the player, a 78 shooter, maybe let's get a little bit more conservative than a tour player on this particular shot would need to be, again, assuming there is a difference. And so they're going to aim further away from the lake. Well, that just means they're going to put more balls in that bunker and or even left of the bunker. And, maybe not at a 78 level, but that guy's, not great at golf. They're potentially going to hit a certain percentage of those next shots, leaving it in the bunker, dumping it into the bunker, and or putting it across and into the green. And it sounds like a mean joke, but the math actually does support, if you're going to hit a shot in the water eventually, it might as well be the first one. And so really, shot patterns are so big that if you take a person, especially that averages over 80, if you just make them more conservative, they're not necessarily going to hit the green in regulation that much more often than what a Decade target would be. But you are making all of their birdie putts longer on average, and that's a Mark Brody talks about a nonlinear gain in every shot counts. It's kind of a nonlinear loss. You're giving up too much and not really getting anything for it. And so you just have to kind of put your head down and trust Decade. And Decade is definitely designed for, I'm not going to say the elite amateur golfer and or playing professional, but it's designed for a 10 handicap or lower. We're designing another version of the app that will be, we're calling it Junior, where it's going to be a little bit slower, introduction of the strategy and the statistics portal, because I've definitely realized it's a lot. It's dense. It's designed for a high golf IQ, but the reason I called it Decade was I wanted to imply we're going to take decades off your learning curve. At the end of the day, there's a lot to this game, a lot more than people think. It's, to give like a guy like Jeff Smith, who teaches a ton of tour players and top collegians, the first time we met, he's like, I heard your seminar's 4 hours long. How on earth do you talk about course management for 4 hours? And I said, to be perfectly honest, I wish I had 2 days. And
Right.
he was like, huh. So we went through it all, and he starts immediately just basically teaching decade to all of his players, because he's like, yeah, that's a really simple way of going about it. So.
And speaking of it being dense, what do you find is usually the uptake? How long on average does it take you to assist teach it where somebody can, obviously they're going to learn more as they go, but at least to start to get it and start employing it out there?
Well, that's the point of junior, is we're going to turn that into a 6-month process. I feel like potentially right now it's if you're not, a 3 or so handicap or better, it might just make your head explode. And so you just get really confused.
Right.
The junior is going to introduce this slower over a 6-month period. But realistically, I mean, overnight, I hate saying it that way because it sounds silly, but even if you don't do decade by the letter of the law, we can track. I mean, so how we've tracked it in our system is the players like first 5 rounds entered, we consider that to be their scoring average. And then we take the subsequent 10 or 20 rounds and consider that their improvement range. And I haven't looked at these numbers in forever, but I'm pretty sure if your scoring average is under 80, like 72% of those people by 2 strokes or more from those first 5 to the next 10. And if your average score is over 80, it's like 87% of them improve by 4 strokes over their rounds 6 to 15 versus 1 to 5. So even just seeing the information, like I jokingly say all the time, it can't make you worse.
Right.
It can't make you dumber.
Yeah.
And so just really trusting that the information's right. Like I say, and even if you don't do decade as taught, just seeing inside the mind of a playing professional, and again, just seeing the success of most of the players that have done it on a high level. It's, all these kids that you're seeing that are under the age of 24 have had access to decade in some, out on tour, have had access to decade in some form or fashion.
Right.
And it's just taking a young player with an immense physical skill set and letting them think very quickly like a 10-year tour veteran. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable, honestly.
For sure. And I think what I liked too, what I saw from the app, and not having a hugely dove into it too deeply, and so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think from even the way knowing how I learn, by the way the app works, by kind of going through and showing you what the correct decision according to decade would have been, and you can kind of Monday morning quarterback your rounds. I feel like that also has got to help with the learning curve, because you can go, not only are you're employing it when you're out there, but you can then kind of go back, see shot by shot what should have been played, and that'll again, it just kind of helps with the learning process.
100%. I mean, so I've got a video that I've put up on YouTube. If you go to Scott Fawcett YouTube channel and then search the U.S. Junior Invitation, it's a video that I made for the college coaches to come to a free session I was going to give at the U.S. Junior this year. And what we were talking about is Tony Romo's got a podcast with Dr. Phil, where Dr. Phil says, kind of a scrawny dude from Eastern Illinois. How were you the quarterback of America's team for 14 years? And Tony's answer was, I think I was the best in post analysis that there is. And it's just, yes, it takes time to enter data, but the problem with statistics in golf is you have to enter them yourselves, and you feel like if you're out there putting for 30 minutes, you're getting better. It's actually entirely possible you're getting worse because you're just mindlessly putting or hitting balls. Whereas if you will enter your data, it feels, in an abstract way, like, what am I doing here? The thing that's different with decade is we then try to kick actionable information to you rather than just 3-putt less. That's not very helpful.
Right.
Why am I 3-putting too much? Now you've got something to go out there and work on. And so what Lou and I have kind of designed, I've heard enough people talk about these 5 things that Tiger tracked, and it's just unbelievable. It's no 3-putts, no bogeys on par 5s, no double bogeys, no bogeys with 9-iron or less, and no blown easy saves. And Lou's having kind of a hard time. It's hard to quantify no blown easy saves because that's a subjective thing that Tiger talked about. But Lou, do you have those numbers handy? Do you like what those numbers kind of turn out for the guys that finish like 1st to 5th in a tournament versus missing a cut?
Yeah, we can definitely try to dive into those. Or it may not translate well on a phone call, but Scott said something a few minutes ago that I think is really important, and I don't want it to get lost for the people listening to the call. He said you have to keep your head down and trust Decade. And when I've talked with people that are trying to implement a core strategy, I think one of the problems is the math may dictate hitting driver off the tee in a certain situation. And someone pulls driver, and it's maybe not something they would normally do, but they're implementing this new strategy, and it's the best math-based decision there is. Mm-hmm. And they hit driver, and they bail out on it, and they put it into a hazard, or they put it into a tough situation, and they say, see, I shouldn't have done that. And you can't base your strategy on one outcome. That would be like to go back to the coin flipping analogy that Scott mentioned earlier. If I were to give you a coin and told you to flip it 10 times, if heads came up 8 out of those 10 times, 80% of the time, you are not going to assume that going forward, every time you flip a coin, there's an 80% chance that heads is going to come up. It's going to be 50-50 if you flip enough coins. But if you only flip it 10 times, there's a fair probability that heads will come up 8 out of those 10 times. What you need to do when you're implementing this core strategy is you need to put that aside and realize that this is it's a marathon and it's not a sprint. And if you make correct decisions over and over and over again, those small fractions will add up and will result in lower scores. And most of us, when we play the game, we enjoy it more when we shoot lower scores. And that's really the essence of what a strategy like Decade can do for you. Mm-hmm. And sort of back to the Tiger 5, without trying to get into the details of the numbers here, I think that part of what the Tiger 5 is the result of implementing a solid and sound strategy. And Scott's talked about this for years, where he will mention Tiger and say Tiger, took Decade and implemented a Decade strategy. He decaded his way around the golf course. And that's not just when I first read that, I was like, oh, that's interesting. When I started to get into the numbers and I looked at the way Tiger played the game, and you take a look and you dissect the ShotLink data and you see what Tiger did out there on the course, that is absolutely what he has done. And there's one of the videos in there, and Scott can talk about it in more detail than me, but Tiger said something to the effect of, I play very aggressively to my targets. And the key part there is to my targets. And his targets were, I have to assume they were very math-based, and they were very in line with what the Decade system is. I know, Scott, if you want to add anything to that.
Well, exactly what you say there. I don't want to say he did it intuitively, because nobody falls out of the womb knowing how to play, of course, golf correctly. But he did do it somewhat intuitively through trial and error. And I think it was a round he played with, I can't remember who it was. It's that Hal Sutton interview where Hal gives him the "you'll learn." Yeah. Later in that interview, he's got a great thing where Tiger says, "I played with whoever it was that shot 66, I think, the prior year in the first round of the U.S. Open." And Tiger was talking to him after the round, and he said, I fired it like maybe one pin today. And he's like, I thought that was weird. And then the next day he came out and he did it again, and he was leading through 36 holes. And Tiger's just like, it was such a learning experience for me. Here I was out there trying to fire at every single pin and just learning that I can play a little bit more, I hate the word conservative, cautious, aggressive, just mathematically correct. Yeah. And it really is just amazing how the guy just picked a part of golf course. And what's funny, like to a game theory standpoint, is I'll get tour players, all the time that are like, well, how am I going to beat Tiger if he's better than me if I play with this same strategy? And the problem with that is that's people taking like a poker idea, game theory and poker. If you're better than me, I can play crazy and increase my chances of beating you because I'm confusing you. But golf is the only sport that's not played with a shared ball. Aside from like bowling, but that's not played with a shared ball, and you can't impact your opponent's play. Aside from gamesmanship, if you're a complete jerk, there's nothing you can do to impact your opponent's play. Right. And so it really is, the golf cliche, you versus the course, but it really is. And so accepting that reality, and, I had a tour player that I was working with that lost his card, and we're having our first conversation 3 or 4 months ago, and he just got it back through the web finals, and he was like, but can I win with this? And I was like, no offense. You just lost your card. You're probably never going to win on tour. I don't know how to say that any softer.
Yeah.
Our first goal here is to get you to keep your card. You don't hit it very far. Odds are you're never going to win. Even if you have 200 more starts, you're what, a 1% win rate guy?
Yep.
If a 1% occurrence doesn't happen in 200 starts, 10 more years on tour, I wouldn't be shocked. So winning can't be our goal. I don't like any outcome goals because they get you, they just get you off the. It's the conversation Will and I had last night about his round today in the Corn Ferry Tour. Like, again, remember, buddy, there's nothing you can do. It's a hard Norman golf course. Wind is supposed to lay down a little bit today versus the first few rounds. But no matter what position you get yourself into, you've got to circle back and remember, I can't force anything. I know you want to win tomorrow. I get that. But third place is a pretty damn good leg up on getting your card for next year, too. Don't try to force it and turn a third into an 18th, which with as stacked as the scores are, I was trying to explain this to some friends last night at dinner. I'm going to pull this thing up real quick here. I mean, Will is in second place at 7 under, and if he goes back to 3 or 4 shots back, he's out of the top 10. And it's just incredible how you turn a great week into essentially a non-factor in the year-long race. So removing the emotion, taking every single part of that out and just plodding along is how you go about getting your tour card and removing the expectation from this specific week.
That's what I love when you coming back to saying removing the emotion, because even if it's not your tour card, if it's just me playing against my buddies in my usual weekend round, and again, it comes back to that emotion that comes in especially when it's close, when it's tight, or when I've lost a couple weeks in a row and I want to, make a win. So I like that idea of being able to lean on the math, so to speak, and just stick with the strategy and the game plan. But one thing, I would just shift gears a little bit, because one thing that really kind of piqued my interest and I wanted to ask you guys directly, I hear a lot of talk about the mental scorecard with the system itself. Can you just explain what that is to me and how that works?
Sure. So Dr. Larden, Dr. Michael Larden, is a guy that about 12 years ago when 13 years ago. Damn it, I'm getting old. 13 years ago, I was reading an article on David Duval in Golf Week, or whatever the old paper magazine was. And I really have always been a Duval fan. And it was Dr. Larden talking about working with Duval. And this was about the time that I decided I was going to really try to gear up and play a lot of good golf in 2008. And with no intention actually of entering Q school at the end of the year like I wound up doing. But I just wanted to really try to set myself up to win the U.S. Mid-Am. So I reached out to Dr. Larden. And he said, you know what, I'm really actually busy, but I think your story's interesting. Let's do this. So we started working together 13, 14 years ago. And he's got this thing that he's tracked forever that he calls the mental scorecard. And it's very simple. It's black or white. Did I have, for lack of a better way of saying it, a decade target? Did I have a specific small target that likely isn't the hole? Did I know the exact shape, trajectory, and distance I was trying to hit it? Did I know what I was trying to do with the shot? And then from the point that I take my first step in my pre-shot routine towards the ball, not that you can't get distracted, but if I got distracted, did I come back and at the moment I pulled the trigger, was I totally committed to what I was trying to do, and was I distracted at all? And it sounds so stupid to think like, well, of course a tour player is going to have a small target and not be distracted and whatever. Well, I gave a seminar this last week in Miami, and Gonzalo Fernandez Castaño sat through it. And I've always got this spot where I'm talking about, I need you to pick a target making up a number 5 yards left of that right pin, and then wait for it. I actually need to have you try to put it there. And I don't want you to aim at a good target and then hope you push it over there by the pin. And I saw him sit back and kind of laugh. And I said, I got to be honest, I can't decide if you're laughing because this seminar is so stupid or if you're laughing because you're so stupid. And he's like, oh, it's the latter. And I was like, I to be honest, I knew that answer. He's like, I do that 6 times a round, and I've always thought this seems really stupid, but I'd never really just taken the time to think about how pointless it is. And again, to what Lou was talking about earlier with Tiger, I've got a video on my YouTube channel where they asked Tiger at the Hero back in 2014 or 15, Tiger, as you've aged, do you play, more aggressively or less aggressively than you did as a younger player? And he says, oh, I've always played very aggressively, but I play aggressively to my spots. And so while my spots might be more on the conservative side, I'm playing aggressively to them. And, go back to, I think it's Rotella, cocky swing, conservative target, all these old golf cliches, like a lot of them are wrong, but that's one that is spot on. Mm-hmm. And as I'm going through that, I can't remember what your question was. I hope I answered it.
Yes,
but that really is
about that mental scorecard.
Yeah. Oh, the mental scorecard. Yes.
Yeah.
So we're trying. Thank you. So we're trying to get that mental scorecard to 95%. Mm-hmm. Most of my college players, when they start tracking this, are in that 88 to 91% range. And it's truly, the math is linear. It's one of the most linear things with regards, like greens and regulation. The more greens and regulation you hit, the lower your scores are, right, pretty much for everyone across the board. The higher your mental scorecard, the lower your scores are pretty much across the board. And higher just being after every hole, you say, okay, well, I was 4 for 4 on that hole, so my mental scorecard was a 4. Or I wasn't really paying attention on that tee shot, so I was 3 for 4. Yeah. Right. If we can get that average to 95%, that's where we're trying to get in. The math of it works out. I've got, myself, Maverick McNeely, a couple other, guys that I trust how they are tracking this stat in the app. And if I take your score relative to par on every hole with a negative mental scorecard event and compare that relative to par to every hole with a positive, 100% positive mental scorecard event, it's about a third of a shot. The actual math, and the reason I say with a guy like myself or Maverick, people that I really trust, we're removing outcome from the decision if that was a positive or negative scorecard event, is because the actual math in the app, even for people averaging 71, top level college golf, it's over half a shot. And the reason I think that's important, why I say looking at the subset of the couple of us, is because it is hard to remove outcome. If I have a 5-foot putt that I miss, and I was kind of daydreaming, but let's say that it actually went in with the exact same mental process. There is a bias in it. I mean, it is a self-reported statistic at the end of the day.
There's always going to be a little bit of it. It reminds me in a lot of ways of something that stuck with me. Years ago, we had Dr. Joseph Parent on the show, and author of Zen Golf. He talked about, he tracks what he calls anyways, and anyways basically being anytime you take a shot, knowing full well something was missing from your process, and you take the shot anyway.
Nice.
So similar type of thing. And it is so true. And you just start to realize, and especially if you track them against each other, the result of those moments versus the moments when you are through your whole process. So I think that's excellent. But before we kind of wrap it up here, I know very similar to your 2-day-long seminars, I could talk about this all day, but I want to make sure we don't miss out. For anybody who is interested in working with you, working with the Decade system, how do they go about that? Is it something that they just download the app? Do they contact you directly? How does that work?
Actually, Lou, why don't you tell them about the ideas we're working on for the different seminars?
Yeah, sure. What Scott and I are putting on the calendar for later this year is a series of multi-day schools to really get into the strategy of Decade and teach it at a more detailed level. Scott mentioned his 3-hour seminar could be expanded over multiple days, and that's what we're going to do. We are going to have one school that's going to be focused more at high school players, elite players at that age level, and we're ironing out some of those locations now, and another will be focused on just regular golfers, quote unquote, like us, to come together over multiple days to really get into the details and the nuances of the system. And we're ironing out some venue locations there as well as the agenda, but should be really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to those.
And once you have that ironed out, where can they find? Is that information going to be something you post on social? Is that going to be on the website? What's where should we look for it?
You can find us both on Twitter, at Scott Fawcett and at Lou Stagner, and then the URL playinglesson.com.
Okay, so all the information will be there for those venue stuff. Okay.
And beyond that, then obviously we've got the Decade Elite app, which is really designed for, people with a relatively high golf IQ. I am amazed at how many people we've got that average in the high 70s and low 80s that get it and track their stats. Like I say, they all see improvement. But then we're about to release this Decade Junior version. It's just been hung up in the App Store for almost a month during the holidays with approval. But that will be designed for, I'd hate calling it junior because it's going to be designed really for anyone who's trying to improve from that 83 or 4 mark on down into the 70s. And then like I say, over the course of 6 months, we're going to give you different points to opt out of transitioning to the elite. If we've gone from 83 to 79, but you're like, man, I'm just kind of enjoying what I've got here. You'll have various ways to just opt in and stay where you're at, or it'll morph you into the elite version at a slower trickling pace of information. And, all that stuff is at playinglesson.com or birdiefire.com. You'll see information on the Decade app. And then I do host seminars still on a somewhat regular basis, once every other month or so around the country, where I'll try to get 15 or 20 players into a room and we just sit down. And it's interesting because so much of good ideas is accidental. The only reason this thing's done indoors is because it has to be, because the NCAA rules of the third paid coach. At the end of the day, once we had done it, I had done the seminar a few times at places like, Wake Forest and Oklahoma State and SMU and, in Texas A&M where I went to school. Once I'd done it a few times, I was like, this is actually the best way to do it. We've removed emotion, the emotion of hitting golf shots, and we're just in here having a nice conversation over a few hours, catering some lunch, and it's a really cool session. I've honestly yet to have anyone, even if it's a 60-year-old man or a 60-year-old woman or a 13-year-old girl, all of which those demographics I had at my seminar in Miami with a PGA Tour player. And it's just hilarious that those 4 demographics all came up to me afterwards and were like, that was amazing. Which, again, the golf nerd in all of us, we just love nerding out and talking golf. And it's, I gave these 5-hour-long seminars yesterday, and it was the same conversation 5 straight times. But it's really fun to keep having the same conversation because you're helping players get better, and it's pretty damn fun.
It is amazing how we can all be so different as golfers, but there's still that thread that holds us together. But all right, it was great having you guys on the show. The other question I have for you guys, will you be at the PGA Show this year? Because if so, we'd love to just pop by and say hi.
I'm not gonna. I was trying to plan something around Chris Como's open forum, and then just last week I found out my daughter's got a choir performance that Tuesday night anyway, so I decided just to skip it and get caught up. Gotcha. What'd you decide, Lou? Did you decide to go or not?
I haven't made the decision yet. It'll be a game time decision. I actually had the conversation last night with my wife, and we may end up going down there. I'll know in the next couple of days.
Great. Well, if you do,
that's code for I want to go, but I'm trying to
exactly.
You got to get that permission. That's for sure. Well, if you do, just make sure you message us or something, because we'll be bouncing around. We'd love to see you in person. But listen, Scott, Lou, it's been incredibly enlightening. Like I said, I know this is something we could talk about in length, but what we'll do is we'll definitely in the show notes, we'll direct the listeners to your website so that they can dive in deeper if anybody wants to get into it a little bit deeper. But regardless, we appreciate your time to come here and then talk to us and tell us a little bit about your philosophies.
You got it. Hey, Lou, actually, it'd be good for the standard listener. Tell them, because Lou's big into fantasy football analytics also. Give him the domain for that. That'd be a perfect one.
You may want to cut
never
this.
Mind.
Yeah.
We'll save that. We'll save that for Twitter.
we'll save that for another one.
Yeah. All right, guys. Listen, it was a pleasure having you both on. Thanks again for the time, and we'll look forward to seeing more from you guys soon.
Awesome. Thanks guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Take
guys.
care. All right. So again, probably one of our longer episodes, but when you've got, again, like we've said with other guests, when you've got that much information, it's just I want to have them get as much of it
That's
out
our
as we
rule of
can.
thumb here. If there's a lot of good nuggets, we just let it go.
A lot of good nuggets. And it was incredible. And I knew that kind of going in, because guys who are like Lou and Scott, who are so, heavily analytical and data driven, there's so much there. The well just goes very, very deep. So there's so much to it, but I wanted to bring them on the show. Not only, big thanks to Anthony Oshawa, who had suggested them as potential guests on the show on Twitter, which, by the way, any of you guys who have suggestions, make sure just, let us know in one way or another. There's a million ways to get in touch with us, Twitter being one of them. But I wanted to get them on and get them talking about, at least to get an idea of some of those the basics of the function and the philosophy. And then this way, anybody who wants to kind of dive into that deeper has that means of doing so.
Right.
So we'll put, like I said, we'll put a lot of that in the show notes. So you can check that out. Of course, as always, in the Golficity app. You also can go to golficity.com/episode 306, and you'll see those links there if you want to dive into it deeper. But again, just another way that I think that the game is going to continue to evolve. We're going to learn more and more because you're getting guys like this who are applying this thinking and this scientific way of approaching things, especially as we're getting more data points, because not only things like the PGA Tour, like ShotLink, and this data is becoming available to anyone to kind of mine it, to our individual data, whether we're getting it from our shot scope or however, even if you're manually tracking it, more and more data is out there for more and more golfers, and we're able to use that to learn from it. So we won't go much longer here because, like I said, it was a longer interview. But again, big shout out and thanks to Scott and Lou for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with all these things that we're learning, the decade system, and we're going to be seeing the game-like training guys next week. I mean, we've got no excuses this year, Frank. Right? Come on, we were pretty lights out.
I can always
there.
Find an excuse.
That's true.
Don't challenge me.
You got it.
All right, guys, that's everything we have for you this week. We'll be at the PGA Show in a couple of days. Make sure you're following along on social. We'll try to bring you guys as much exciting stuff as we can that we see while we're down there.
And next week's episode is going to be a very special one.
That's right.
A special guest.
We're going to be a special guest from a special location. We're going to be down there at the PGA Show. We won't tell you too much more than that.
Yep.
We'll let you guys sit in suspense.
Love it.
But you will enjoy it. All right, that's everything we have. We'll see everybody again next week.